Good morning. This is Nicole Ringgold. This morning I'm going to show you how to solder a sawn out word. I will show you how to solder it to a ring band or an existing piece of jewelry. For the word, you'll need a piece of 22 gauge sterling silver sheet, and I save my scraps specifically for this purpose. I begin by pulling up a font generator and typing in the word of my choice. Of course, if you're confident in your own calligraphy, then you can simply draw the word on a sheet of paper. These font generators provide so many different options. So once you've made your choice, then I take a screenshot of the word, which saves to my desktop. I generally try to print out more than one word, knowing that I'll use it again. So I select multiple copies, go to about 16. You can choose the size by percentage. And then once you figure that out, print it out, and you're ready to go. I do caution you against drawing directly on the silver because when you're sawing it out, it's likely to smear or completely disappear, and that can be very frustrating. Cut out the word, not around the letters. You can just cut a square around the word. Use rubber cement and make sure that it's not a very thick layer because then it will take forever to dry. Some people prefer glue sticks and they're just as effective. Once it dries, you'll drill into all of the inside portions first and saw those out. That's called piercing and sawing. It really doesn't matter what size drill bit you use, you just want to make sure that your twist drill fits within the lines. If you've pre-annealed your metal, then the drill bit will go through just like butter. It's going to be a lot easier for you. And by sawing out the insides first, it's going to give you something more to hold on to so that you're not just dealing with these itty-bitty pieces while also trying to hold on to your piece and saw. The saw blade size does matter, so I use this chart from Green Lion Studios. You can also download it from online. 22 gauge silver sheet translates to approximately a 4/0 saw blade. You'll thread the saw blade through one of the holes that you drilled. Make sure the blade is nice and taut. Wax your blade. And as I've talked about in my previous tutorials, make sure that when you're holding your saw, your elbow is at a 90-degree angle. Hold your saw frame as if you're holding a bird by its neck. You do not want to strangle the bird. With this posture, you'll relieve the tension all the way up to your neck. It will also save you from breaking thousands of saw blades in one project. I usually re-wax my saw blade about every inch or sometimes a little bit more if I'm working on a corner like I am inside the G. Once I'm done sawing out the details inside the word, then very carefully work on the outside. And this is where the size of the saw blade is important. It was important before so that you don't end up giving yourself a massive headache while trying to saw out the inside of the letters. However, on the outside, for these little details, and so that you don't go through the line, you want to make sure that your saw blade is the right size, not too big. To saw into the corners, I'm going up one side, and then I go up the other side. I don't try to turn inside that corner because instead of making it nice and sharp, it will round it out and it won't look as precise. If you do happen to break a saw blade, then you'll need to switch it out and then start back at the beginning of your project and just very carefully work your way up and down all the way through what you've already sawn until you can continue where you left off. Going back to the beginning, if this looks like a nightmare of a sawing job for you, you might want to choose a font that has a little bit thicker lines, and that will give you some room to practice. And if you're struggling with your dexterity, you may want to use a pair of needle nose pliers, and you can hold your piece. You'll just want to be sure that the pliers are as close to the saw blade as possible so that you have some stability in the sawing. The silver won't pop up and down as you're sawing, which would cause your saw blade to break. If you find that your lines are not super straight and you've got some little jagged bits, on the outside you can use these separating discs or cutoff wheels. I get these through Rio Grande, and you can see the product number for ordering. And so then I use these to shave off blemishes or jagged spots on the outside of the word. To access the blemishes or the jagged spots inside the letters, you can use some very fine files like these. You can get these at any hardware store, but through Rio Grande, these are a number 4 cut file. 114773 is the product number. And this particular set comes in a set of 12. And they're, of course, perfect for getting inside those letters because they come in different shapes, and so that you can access the curve of the letters. If your silver is not yet annealed, which hopefully it is, but if it's not, then anneal it now. And then you'll use easy solder. Here I'm fluxing. I use Mighty Flux. And I've only got about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, let's say, of propane that I'm starting with my Little Smith oxygen propane torch. Your word is quite vulnerable, so you really don't need a lot of heat. And now I'm going to sweat the easy solder with my pick, transferring it over to the word. Remember to heat the solder, not the pick, and make sure that your pick is clean. If you want to learn how to use Little Smith torch, I do offer a full-length tutorial further back into the past in my feed that's well worth watching if you're struggling with how to best use this incredibly powerful torch. Another note about pick soldering is that if you take too long to heat the solder while you're trying to pick it up, solder follows heat, so what it's going to do is smear across the surface of your pleasantly warm soldering platform. So just be sure that if that happens, move your bit of solder to another spot on your soldering platform that's not as hot. I can't say it enough. Solder follows heat. And apparently I say it so much that one of my students lovingly sent me this hand-sewn solder follows heat wall hanging. Thank you very much, Gay. Moving forward, I am fluxing the top and the bottom of my ring shank. This ring shank is 21 gauge sterling silver sheet. I have it balanced on a titanium quad made by Lion Punch Forge. And as you can see, I'm primarily heating from below. That word grow is quite vulnerable, so I'm trying to avoid it as much as possible. I'm heating the top some, but mostly trying to access the mass by heating from below. I'm watching the color of the silver as it's switching, and I don't know if you can see that slight yellow hue. That means easy solder flow point. So as soon as I see that yellow hue, I'm going to focus my torch closer and closer to the solder that I want to have flow. If you're worried about burning that word, you can use your pick as a heat sink. But primarily, you're going to be heating from below, and that's going to protect that word. You're watching for that solder that you sweat to the back of the word to come out all the sides. You're going to wait to see it. It's going to be like a slightly white, shiny frame around each of the words or each of the letters. But now let's say that you have this piece and you think, oh shoot, I really wish I'd attached a word. This is how you would do it. I'm protecting the bail with my third hand that's acting as a heat sink. I'm only going to flux the top and the bottom of one side, the side with the word of the butterfly, because I don't want to screw around with any of the other previous solder joints. And once again, I'm using the titanium quad from Lion Punch Forge so that I can access heating the wing from below. My main challenge with this one is that I don't want the solder between this wing that I'm heating and the body to reflow. That connection was with hard solder, but I still don't want to work too closely to it. I really don't want that wing to pop off. So I'm heating below the wing, and I'm also heating above the wing around the word, but as you can see, I'm avoiding putting my torch on the word, and I'm using my pick as a heat sink. And just like I did with the ring shank, I'm watching for that word to slump and for the solder, the shining, glimmering solder, to shine all the way around the word, in between the letters. And once it's secure, I'll throw it in the pickle. Once it's clean, I'll use this black silicone disc. That's the product number from Rio Grande. And here I take off any jagged edges so that it's comfortable when worn against your skin. And then after that, I'll use a sunburst radial disc. I'll use the yellow, which is the most abrasive. And with this, basically I'm cleaning it up, polishing it, going back and forth every direction. It will also allow my piece to absorb the liver of sulfur more consistently. To apply the liver of sulfur, you really don't want there to be any dirt dust, fingerprints in there. There are quite a few different ways to apply patina. I use Midas liver of sulfur chips, and I put them in room temperature water. Most people heat this liver of sulfur in a crock pot, which makes the liver of sulfur work effectively and very quickly. However, I prefer to leave it in room temperature water because it lasts a full week rather than needing to dispose of it in a day. To apply it, I turn my torch to an annealing temperature, which is this soft flame tip where you can still see some of that propane. And you don't have to worry that way about overheating your piece and having solder joints reflow. So I'm annealing it, and then I use a brush to apply the liver of sulfur. Sometimes I simply dip the whole piece in the liver of sulfur, but after the liver of sulfur is about 2-3 days old, I have found that using a brush makes it darker and consistent. And the brushes can be paint brushes or flux brushes from Rio Grande. I begin by using an abrasive fiber wheel and then go back to the sunburst radial disc. And with this, I remove some of the liver of sulfur. I love this effect because it brings out all of those details that you so carefully worked on to saw out. Switch over to the sunburst radial disc. And then I sometimes use a polisher with rouge and then wash it with mild soap and water. And that's all I have for today. Let me know if you have comments, questions below. I do my best to answer every single one. And thank you to Rio Grande for sponsoring my YouTube channel. The details on how to get free shipping are in the description below. Thank you and have a great day.